Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're taking on a really compelling narrative, something we've been wanting to get into for a while. It's about the highly intentional process of personal reinvention.
And achieving self-sovereignty, especially in later life.
Exactly. We're diving into a source called Sunrise at 70, and it's really more than just a story. It feels like a blueprint for freedom.
It really does. And I think our mission for this deep dive is to pull out the most actionable pieces from it, because the material gives us this really cohesive three-part framework.
Framework for what, exactly?
For moving from a feeling of being, confined by what everyone else expects to a state of being, as it says, fully alive.
And that framework is?
It's a trifecta, really. First, cultivated solitude. Second, intentional identity shifts. A lot of that is psychological unlearning. And third, the role of a chosen community.
Right. And there's this great Helen Mirren quote that seems to capture the whole philosophy. She says, "One of the great gifts of growing older is to discover the exquisite art of being alone but never lonely."
And that's it.
Yeah.
That distinction alone versus lonely, that's the engine for this whole transformation.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Let's start with that first pillar. Solitude as a tool for, well, self-governance.
Yeah, and we have to be super precise with the definition here because the world just confuses these two things all the time.
Solitude and loneliness.
Right. Solitude is a choice. It's deliberate. It's where you go to restore and reflect and honestly empower yourself. Loneliness. Loneliness is the opposite. It's involuntary social isolation.
And that has real consequences.
Oh, huge. I mean, the public health data is overwhelming. Chronic loneliness is linked to some really serious adverse health outcomes. Things like accelerated cognitive decline, depression, even increased cardiovascular risk.
So if loneliness is this kind of public health crisis, how does the narrator make sure this choice of solitude? How does she keep it from sliding into that dangerous, unintentional isolation?
That is the critical question. And the source is really clear on this. The solitude has to be chosen and managed within a network of support.
So it's about the dosage.
It's totally about the dosage. Solitude is a sanctuary from the noise, not a permanent absence of the network. When you have that baseline of healthy connection, then solitude becomes this place where you make decisions for the life you actually want.
Not the one that's expected of you.
Exactly. You have to see it as a resource, not a punishment.
So what does that look like, practically speaking? I mean, we're not talking about sitting on a mountaintop for a year.
No, not at all. It's much simpler. It's reclaiming hours. Hours where you aren't performing for other people and you aren't just numbing yourself with distractions.
So for the narrator, what was it?
It was simple things. A morning walk,
Yeah.
journaling, or just deliberately listening to music that connects you back to who you were before you were a job title or a spouse.
It's about giving yourself permission to just exist without apologizing for it.
Yes. And that time, that space, is what creates what the source calls the inner court.
The inner court.
Yeah, and that's the only place where you can really see the difference between the patterns you've borrowed from other people and what you actually want.
Because the outside world is all about performance.
Constant performance. And seeking approval. The inner court is where you curate your life toward alignment, not approval.
So solitude becomes sovereignty. It's protecting your creative time, your emotional bandwidth from being colonized, I guess.
That's a great way to put it. It's like establishing intellectual and emotional property rights over yourself. The narrator says it so well. The moment you choose solitude, you're setting a boundary that says, I get to choose who gets my best attention.
I just love that specific detail she gives about her apartment, her physical sanctuary. It's oriented exactly how she wants it. She says, the thermostat never disappoints me. The music plays only what my ears crave.
There are no compromises here.
Yes. Solitude becomes this incredible luxury, a form of power, just the freedom to be uninhibited, unobserved, unedited.
The whole world can wait. And that's a concrete manifestation of self-respect, isn't it? If you can't design your own small, intimate space to suit your needs, how can you possibly design your life?
That's a great point. And that clarity you get in that inner court, that's what creates the runway for the second pillar, which is this idea of intentional reinvention.
Right. And the source frames reinvention as both an attitude and a method.
It also says that midlife is a particularly fertile time for this.
Because you finally have perspective. You've seen enough patterns to know which ones are toxic and which ones actually work for you.
Huh.
On a practical level, this stage is about clarifying your values now, not 20 years ago, and then experimenting. Small, low-stakes projects.
And being willing to reskill.
Oh, absolutely. Reinvention isn't one big explosion. It's iterative. You build confidence one small project at a time.
And what about the career shift? Because that's a huge piece of this for so many people. The source says that the whole idea of a single career ladder is just obsolete.
Totally obsolete. The metaphor it uses is a garden, which I love. Different projects and skills can bloom and then fade in different seasons of your life.
So you might take a micro-credential in something.
Exactly, maybe in data analysis. And that blooms for a few years. And at the same time, maybe an older consulting role starts to fade back a bit. Then something new, like community organizing, starts to sprout. It's dynamic.
The gardener has to be flexible, curious, and the source points to things like micro-credentials and cross-generational mentorships as key tools.
For sure. Because depth of experience is one thing, but you have to be curious enough to learn the new language, the new tools. The younger generation has fluency in the present moment.
And the older generation has fluency in sustained attention, in patience.
Both are essential.
Yeah.
But the real heavy lift here, the hardest part, it's the psychological unlearning. You have to actively shed these deep, internalized rules about age and relevance and worth.
Where does that stuff even come from?
It's the bait of shame, as the text calls it. It's this cumulative, internalized voice of culture that tells you what you should be doing, what you should have achieved by now.
Or that you're too old to start something new.
Always. That you're too old. And to refuse that bait, you have to reframe how you think about failure.
How so?
You have to stop seeing it as an indictment of your character, that you're not enough. Failure is just data. Every experiment that didn't destroy the narrator became proof that she could survive change.
So you refuse the bait of shame by letting go of perfectionism.
And accepting messy, incremental effort, which connects so deeply to this concept the narrator calls primal intelligence.
It sounds a little mystical.
It's not, though. It's biological. Primal intelligence is about digging back to find what she calls your first language. The knowing that comes before language, before everyone else's opinions conditioned you to doubt yourself.
So it's about your gut instinct.
It's about trusting your gut. She talks about being taught to compromise her feelings, to smile when her body wanted to run, to stay when her bones ached to leave.
So the work is to audit every time you apologize for having a gut feeling.
That's the work. You look at the moments you knew the answer, but you deferred to someone else, a parent, a boss, a cultural norm, and you paid the price for it. It's about getting back to that fundamental realization. I was born knowing. That's your compass when all the other maps fail.
And what really forces her to find that compass is, well, it's a crisis. The turning point in the whole narrative is her brother's cancer diagnosis in 2011.
A total reckoning.
Yeah.
Because it just revealed this terrible truth that accumulated perfection could not shield him.
All the beauty and elegance and success, it couldn't save him.
Exactly. And that failure shattered the illusion that she could control everything. The realization that control was an illusion. That's what started the really painful but necessary unlearning.
And that grief, that real feeling, it leads to this fierce need to protect her own consciousness, which means making a decision about anger and resentment.
Yeah, and this brings up the physical cost of suppressing emotion. The source calls resentment a slow poison administered by your own hand.
It says swallowed rage ages you faster than time ever could.
It literally does. It hardens blood vessels, steals neurons. The chronic stress of holding on to bitterness isn't just spiritual, it's physiological.
So it's not a moral failing to hold on to anger, it's a physiological drain.
You're in a constant low-grade state of fight or flight. So reinvention requires this deliberate choice to let go of grudges, of judgments. You have to realize the only person you're hurting by holding on is yourself.
Protecting your peace becomes the top priority.
The highest priority. But that kind of sustained peace, it needs external support, which brings us right to that third pillar, community as scaffolding.
You can't do it in a vacuum.
No way. The narrator finds her chosen community, and it's this diverse group of women who had also been kind of pushed to the margins by life. And she really emphasizes the value of intergenerational exchange.
What does that exchange look like? What are they trading?
It's a trade of attention and fluency. Older adults can teach patience, sustained attention, the craft that our modern culture kind of dismisses as slow.
And younger people share tech skills, cultural fluency?
Exactly. It keeps the older person from becoming isolated or irrelevant. It's an energy exchange based on mutual respect, not just a one-way mentorship.
But this community also has to respect the autonomy she's worked so hard to build. So the relationships themselves, they have to be different.
They have to be re-engineered. Traditional relationships often demand you merge with someone or sacrifice your space. This new social architecture has to preserve independence.
The source brings up living apart together.
Yeah, which is a fascinating model that preserves autonomy while still allowing for deep connection. The whole point is that relationships have to be shaped by choice, not by obligation.
So how does she deal with the cultural pressure, the idea that you're somehow failing if you don't have a traditional partner or a packed social calendar?
It requires a conscious rejection of those norms. The narrator is firm about it. She chooses only the connections that elevate her peace and help her thrive. Anything that feels heavy or performative or guilt-driven,
It's out.
systematically excluded.
So this blend of inner peace and selective community, it all leads to this core ethos of resilience. And there's that quote, "You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them."
That refusal to be reduced. That's the ultimate act of self-sovereignty. It's not denying that things are hard, but you get to define what the experience means.
She chooses to see her age lines not as decline, but as a map of terrain crossed.
Proof of survival. And that resilience is built on accepting imperfection. She talks about the art of getting it wrong.
Strength is found in the rising, not in never falling.
Exactly. Perfection is fragile. It's exhausting. She realized her mistakes didn't make her weak. They just made her human. And that self-forgiveness, that's what lubricates everything. She says, mercy became available only when I stopped expecting perfection.
It's self-compassion as a strategy.
Yeah, for sure. And that leads to her deepest refuge, this metaphor she uses of the music they can't hear.
This internal world that can't be colonized.
The jukebox in the ribcage. It's this internal space that has its own rhythms, its own frequencies. It doesn't need anyone's permission or translation. It's where she's a prolific dreamer.
And the world can't touch that.
It can't. It can take your job or your reputation, but it can't take the music only you can hear. And that's essential, because that's where creativity and real choice come from. It's the wellspring of freedom.
Which leads to the final form of this self-mastery, the art of being, where the self becomes the ultimate masterpiece.
Yeah, she fully embraces the self as a work of art that she gets to create. She says, I choose the colors, mix the shades of all the love my life displays. She wears her age like silk, refined.
And the final realization is that the value she was searching for outside herself for decades.
It was there the whole time. She says, the only value I needed was mine. Been there all along. And that recognition, that's the sunrise.
Wow. An incredible deep dive into engineering self-sovereignty. So for you listening, let's just recap that trifecta of reinvention. You need sovereign solitude to clarify your choices.
Then you need intentional practice unlearning shame, reskilling, to actually manifest those choices.
And finally, a generous, chosen community to provide safety and feedback. It's about freedom from borrowed light and what everyone else expects.
And if we think about the bigger picture, the narrator found this freedom by systematically walking away from what she called the old world, a life built on performance and guilt. She let go of things that were never hers to carry in the first place.
Which leaves a really important question for you to think about.
If, as the narrator says, happiness is the only debt I've paid, what specific burdens are you still carrying? What compromises based on external judgment?
Are you choosing to walk away from right now in service of your own sunrise?
That choice changes everything.
Absolutely. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.